The human called Lieutenant Kara Voss smelled wrong. Not bad, mind you, just wrong. Like burnt copper mixed with that peculiar salt-sweat combination their species produces under stress. I'd been stationed on the Joint Coalition training vessel Aurora's Dawn for 3 cycles now, and I'd learned to read human scent signatures the way my people read thermal patterns. This particular aroma, pure adrenaline laced with something darker, fear, maybe, or determination so intense it might as well be fear's twin sibling. Instructor Tel'raith, she said, her voice carrying that clipped efficiency humans use when they're pretending everything's fine. Permission to run the fire suppression drill in Bay 7. I blinked all 3 of my eyes in sequence. A nervous habit, admittedly. That bay scheduled for deep cleaning. Use Bay 4. Bay 4's ventilation system is down for maintenance. Then use Bay 9. She shifted her weight. That thing humans do when they're about to argue but trying to look respectful. Bay 9 doesn't have the updated suppression equipment. The cadets need to train on current systems. Valid point. Annoying, but valid. I waved 2 of my primary appendages in what I'd learned humans interpreted as grudging approval. Fine, but keep it short. Maintenance wants that bay cleared by 3rd rotation. She snapped off one of those sharp gestures they call a salute, then turned on her heel with that peculiar human grace that always looked like controlled falling. I watched her go, her boots making those distinctive thumping sounds on the deck plating that still startled me sometimes. 3 cycles, and I still wasn't used to how loud humans were, how much space they took up without even trying. I should have paid more attention to the smell. 2 hours later the alarms started screaming. Not the drill alarms. Oh no. The real ones. The ones that make your circulatory fluid run cold and your survival instincts start cataloging exit routes. The ones accompanied by that automated voice that somehow manages to sound calm while informing you that yes, you might die today. Please proceed in an orderly fashion to your designated panic location. Hull breach in Bay 7. Atmosphere venting. Fire suppression systems offline. Hull breach in Bay 7. I was moving before my conscious mind caught up, my 6 limbs carrying me down the corridor faster than dignity would normally permit. Behind me I heard other instructors mobilizing, but I was closest. Bay 7 was my responsibility. Those cadets were my responsibility. The smoke hit me first. Thick, black, chemical-laced smoke that spoke of things burning that were never meant to burn. Through my ship-issued breathing membrane, I could taste the wrongness of it. Plastics, insulation, something acidic that made my sensory nodes recoil. Then I saw her, Lieutenant Kara Voss, human, approximately 70 standard kilograms of stubbornness, wrapped in a uniform that was actively on fire in 3 places, was dragging Cadet Nambala toward the emergency bulkhead. Nambala, a Thracian with 4 legs and probably outweighing Voss by half, was unconscious and bleeding that purple-green mixture that meant serious internal damage. Voss. I activated my suit's external speakers. Leave him. The bay's compromised. She didn't even look at me, just kept pulling, her muscles straining in a way that had to hurt, had to be causing damage. Humans have this thing about their muscular structure. See, it's inefficient, prone to tearing, requires constant maintenance. But right then, watching her haul Nambala's bulk across deck plating that was starting to buckle from heat stress, it looked anything but weak. She got Nambala through the bulkhead, collapsed against the wall, chest heaving, those strange human lungs working like overloaded atmospheric processors. 2 more, she gasped. Priya and Marcus. Still inside. The structural integrity is at 40%, Voss. 39. 38. She looked at me then. Her eyes, those weird forward-facing predator eyes that always seemed too intense, too focused, met mine. I know. Then she turned around and went back in. I want to tell you I immediately followed, that I exhibited the kind of courage they write about in training manuals and recruitment propaganda. But the truth is I stood there for a full 2 seconds, my survival instincts screaming at me in 17 different chemical alarm signals, before my duty protocols finally overrode my common sense. The heat inside was enormous. My suit's temperature regulators were already complaining, flashing warnings across my visual overlay that I absolutely did not need right now. Thank you very much. Through the smoke I could see Voss's heat signature moving deeper into the bay, toward the training section that was currently doing its best impression of a small star. She'd found one of them. Cadet Priya Okonkwo, human, barely 18 standard years old, unconscious and pinned under a collapsed equipment rack. Voss was trying to lift it, her muscles standing out in sharp relief against her skin, her face contorted in that expression humans make when they're pushing past reasonable limits into the territory of this is definitely going to hurt tomorrow. If there was a tomorrow. Help me, she shouted, not looking to see who I was, just assuming someone would be there. That kind of trust would have been touching if we weren't about to be vaporized. I grabbed the rack with 4 of my appendages. She pulled with her too, and together we hauled it up just enough for Priya to slide free. Voss grabbed her under the arms and started dragging. Again, Marcus? I asked, already knowing the answer would be terrible. She jerked her head toward the far corner, where flames were actively trying to consume everything they touched with what seemed like personal vendetta. Over there, unconscious when the explosion hit. Explosion. Right. That explained the hull breach, and the fire, and the imminent death situation we'd somehow wandered into. Structural integrity at 22%, Voss. We need to leave, now. Get Priya out, she said, shoving the unconscious cadet toward me. I'll get Marcus. That's an order, Instructor. She smiled then. Actually smiled, with teeth showing and everything. Humans do that when they're happy, usually, but they also do it when they've decided to do something monumentally stupid and don't want you to know how terrified they are. Court-martial me later, Tel'raith. If we live. She ran toward the flames. I got Priya to the bulkhead, shoved her through into waiting medical appendages, then turned back. The smoke was thicker now, the heat intense enough that my suit was no longer complaining, but simply screaming in continuous alarm tones. Through the haze I could see Voss's thermal signature, bent over another signature that wasn't moving. She was trying to lift him. Cadet Marcus Webb, human, nearly 2 meters tall and built like what humans call a brick house, whatever that means. Point being, he was heavy, and she was already injured, already exhausted, already running on whatever mysterious reserves of stubbornness her species seemed to possess in unlimited quantities. The deck lurched. Not a small movement. A serious, ship is breaking apart kind of lurch that sent my stabilizing appendages scrambling for purchase. Structural integrity at 8%. Hull collapse imminent. Evacuate immediately. Voss had Marcus under the arms now, was pulling him backward, step by agonizing step, toward the exit that seemed impossibly far away. Her face was streaked with soot and blood. Her uniform was still smoldering in places, and she was making these small sounds of effort that spoke of muscles pushed far past their design specifications. I moved to help, grabbing Marcus's legs with 2 appendages while using the others to pull us all toward safety. Together we hauled him across deck plating that was now actively melting in places, through smoke thick enough to cut with a blade, toward the bulkhead that represented the difference between life and explosive decompression. We were 3 meters away when the bay gave up its structural integrity with a sound like the universe tearing. The atmosphere began venting with a roar that drowned out everything else. My suit's magnetic locks engaged, anchoring me to the deck. Voss, who had no such technology, was sliding backward, still gripping Marcus with that death grip humans use when they absolutely refuse to let go of something. I reached out, grabbed her with 2 appendages, while maintaining my grip on Marcus, with another, and pulled. My limbs strained, my suit servos whined in protest, and somewhere in the back of my mind, my survival instincts were filing formal complaints about my life choices. We tumbled through the bulkhead. The emergency door slammed shut with a finality that spoke of automated systems that, unlike us, had excellent survival instincts. The sudden silence was almost as shocking as the noise had been. Voss lay on her back, chest heaving, staring at the ceiling with those predator eyes that now looked slightly unfocused. Medical personnel swarmed over her, and Marcus and the others, their efficiency a blur of practiced movement. I sat down. Just sat down. Right there in the corridor, all 6 limbs sprawled in whatever directions they'd ended up, and tried to remember how breathing worked. Instructor Tel'raith. One of my fellow instructors, Krivol, approached cautiously, Are you injured? My dignity is critically wounded, I managed. Everything else appears functional. The human, insane, I said. Absolutely, certifiably insane. Went back in, twice. Dragged 3 cadets out of a bay that was actively trying to kill everyone in it. Krivol's sensory stalks quivered in what I recognized as confusion. Why? And that was the question, wasn't it? Why would any rational being run toward danger instead of away from it? Why risk your life for others who might not even survive? Why choose certain harm to prevent possible death? I watched as they loaded Voss onto a medical platform, watched as she weakly raised one hand to check on her cadets before unconsciousness finally claimed her. Watched, and began to understand something about humans that all the cultural briefings and interaction protocols had failed to convey. They were all insane. Every last one of them. Beautifully, terrifyingly, magnificently insane. And somehow, against all logic and survival instinct, that insanity might just be what the galaxy needed. The medical bay smelled like antiseptic and that peculiar chemical mixture they used to synthesize human-compatible blood plasma. I'd been sitting in the observation area for 6 hours, watching through the transparent aluminum partition as the medical team worked on Lieutenant Kara Voss and the 3 cadets she'd dragged from what remained of Bay 7. They'd all survived. Barely. Nembala had a fractured spine and severe respiratory damage. Priya Okunkor had 3rd-degree burns across 40% of her body and a collapsed lung. Marcus Webb had suffered critical head trauma and was currently in an induced coma while nanites rebuilt portions of his fractured skull. And Voss had smoke inhalation, 2nd-degree burns, torn terse in both shoulders, 3 cracked ribs, and what the human doctor cheerfully described as enough bruising to paint a sunset. She woke up screaming, not in pain, though I'm certain there was plenty of that. No, she woke up screaming names. Marcus, Priya, Nembala. Her hands clawed at the medical restraints, her eyes wild with that particular human panic that comes from not knowing if your actions mattered. I moved before thinking, my appendages carrying me through the partition door and to her bedside. They're alive, Voss. All 3. You got them out. She stopped struggling, blinked, focused on me with an effort that looked physically painful. All of them? All of them. Nembala is already complaining about the food, which his species does when they're recovering well. Priya will need extensive regeneration therapy, but she's stable. Marcus is in a coma, but the doctors say his neural patterns are strong. She slumped back against the bed and I watched something drain out of her. Tension, maybe? Or that combat readiness humans seem to carry in their very cells. Okay, she whispered. Okay, that's good. Then she looked at me properly, her eyes sharpening despite the pain medication I could smell in her system. You came in after me. Someone had to save you from your own stupidity. She laughed, actually laughed, though it turned into a coughing fit that made the medical monitors start complaining. When she recovered, she was grinning. Thanks, Tel'raith, for not letting me die in there. Thank me by never doing anything that monumentally idiotic again. Can't promise that. Of course she couldn't. Because she was human, and humans apparently had a genetic predisposition toward heroic stupidity. The investigation into the Bay 7 incident took 3 days. Turned out to be a cascading failure in the fire suppression system that somehow coincided with a faulty atmospheric recycler and a power surge from a completely unrelated maintenance operation. The universe's way of demonstrating that sometimes things just go catastrophically wrong for no good reason. Captain Yelmoth, our commanding officer and a Krell with approximately 0 tolerance for nonsense, called me to her office on the 4th day. Instructor Tel'raith, she said, her translator rendering her clicking speech patterns into flat, emotionless standard. I've read your report on the incident. Yes, Captain. You failed to mention that Lieutenant Voss directly disobeyed your order to evacuate. I shifted uncomfortably. The situation was fluid. Communications were compromised. Perhaps she didn't hear. One of Yelmoth's eye stalks swiveled to stare at me with what I'd learned to recognize as deep skepticism. Don't insult my intelligence, Tel'raith. The human disobeyed a direct order from a superior officer during an emergency situation. The regulations are clear. The regulations were written for normal circumstances, Captain. This was not normal. No, Yelmuth agreed. It was not. Which is why I'm not bringing charges. Instead, I'm recommending Lieutenant Voss for the Coalition Valor Commendation. I'm also recommending you for the same, along with a formal notation of exemplary conduct under crisis conditions. I blinked all three eyes in surprise. Captain, I merely assisted. Voss did the actual rescuing. You went into a collapsing bay to save your subordinate and her cadets. That's not merely assisting, Instructor. That's courage. Take the commendation. Let people know that not all heroes are human. I left her office feeling oddly unsettled. The commendation didn't bother me. Exactly. It was the implication that somehow humans had cornered the market on this particular brand of dangerous selflessness. As if the rest of us were just waiting for them to show us how it was done. It bothered me enough that I went to find Voss. She was in the rehabilitation center working with a physical therapist to rebuild the muscle tissue in her shoulders. I watched through the observation window as she grimaced through exercises that were clearly agonizing, her jaw set in that stubborn line humans get when they've decided pain is merely an opinion they disagree with. When she finished, she spotted me and waved me in. Tel'raith, come to watch me suffer. I came to ask you a question. Why did you go back? She grabbed a towel, wiping sweat from her face with slow, careful movements that spoke of lingering pain. They were my cadets, my responsibility. They were unconscious. You had already saved one. The probability of successfully retrieving the others was less than 20%. The probability of your own survival decreased with each second you remained in that bay. Any rational analysis would have concluded that retreat was the only logical option. Probably, she agreed. Good thing I'm not very good at math. Voss, I'm serious. You could have died. You nearly did die. For a 20% chance at saving 2 people. She met my gaze and I saw something in those predator eyes that I'd been missing. Not recklessness. Not stupidity. Something else entirely. Tel'raith, do you know what they teach us in officer training? Not the combat stuff or the technical specifications. The other stuff. The human stuff. I shook my head. They tell us that leadership means being the last one off a sinking ship. That you don't ask your people to go anywhere you wouldn't go yourself. That the mission matters, but the people matter more. They tell us that we're not just responsible for what happens on our watch. We're responsible for who we are during those moments. She paused, considering. I could have left them, saved myself, made the logical choice. But then who would I be? What kind of officer abandons their people when things get hard? A living one. She smiled, that teeth showing smile again. Maybe, but I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror afterward. And that's a long time to live with shame. I realized then that I'd been asking the wrong question. It wasn't why she went back. It was how could she not go back? For humans, apparently the answer to should I risk my life to save others wasn't a calculation. It was an identity. Your species is exhausting, I told her. Yeah, we get that a lot. The commendation ceremony happened 2 weeks later. Captain Yelmuth presented both of us with the Coalition Valor Commendation in front of the entire training vessel complement. Voss stood at attention despite the pain I knew she was still experiencing. Her uniform crisp, her bearing perfect. The 3 cadets she'd saved stood in the front row, watching with expressions that ranged from grateful to awed. What I didn't know, couldn't have known, was that someone had recorded the entire incident. Security footage from the bay, from the corridor, from my suit's external cameras. Someone had compiled it into a 7-minute recording that showed in excruciating detail exactly what had happened in Bay 7, and someone had sent it to Earth. Humans, it turns out, have this thing about their heroes. They don't just honor them privately, in quiet ceremonies with respectful attention. Oh no. They broadcast it. They share it. They make sure everyone knows what happened, who did what, why it mattered. They turn their heroes into stories and their stories into legends, and their legends into cultural touchstones that ripple across their entire civilization. 3 months after the incident, I received a communication from Earth's Galactic Relations Office. They wanted to inform me that Lieutenant Kara Voss had been formally inscribed into something called the Hero Archives, a digital repository of human courage maintained by Earth's collective governments. Her story was being taught in leadership courses across human space. Children were writing reports about her. Artists were creating representations of the rescue. And they wanted to inscribe me too. Absolutely not, I told the human official on the other end of the transmission. She blinked, clearly surprised. Instructor Tel'raith, this is a tremendous honor. Very few non-humans have been inscribed in the hero archives. I did what any instructor would do. I assisted a subordinate in distress. There's nothing heroic about basic competence. You ran into a collapsing bay to save lives. That's heroic by any definition. I ran in because Voss's insanity was contagious and I temporarily lost my survival instincts. That's not heroism, that's poor decision-making. The official smiled in that knowing way humans have when they think they understand something you don't. Instructor, the definition of courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite fear. You were terrified, your suit logs show your stress hormones were off the charts, and you went in anyway. That's exactly what heroism looks like. I wanted to argue, wanted to explain that I wasn't some noble figure, making calculated sacrifices for the greater good. I was a teacher who panicked when my student ran into danger and made a split-second decision I barely remembered making. That's not the stuff of legend. That's just instinct wrapped in duty and tied together with academic responsibility. But looking at the official's earnest expression, I realized something. Humans needed their heroes, needed to believe that courage was possible, that people could overcome their fear, that sacrifice meant something. They needed it the way my people need thermal regulation, or oxygen breathers need atmosphere, and maybe, just maybe, the rest of the galaxy needed it too. Fine, I said, inscribe me. But I want it noted that I was reluctant. We'll include that detail. It makes the story better. Of course it did. Because humans didn't just want heroes. They wanted reluctant heroes. Flawed heroes. Heroes who were terrified and did the thing anyway. Heroes who complained about it afterward. They wanted heroes who felt real. I attended Voss's promotion ceremony 6 months later. They made her a captain, gave her command of a training frigate, and generally treated her like she'd done something remarkable instead of merely surviving her own terrible decisions. She accepted it all with grace and humility, and that quiet human pride that comes from having your worth recognized. Afterward, we shared a drink in the officers' lounge. Well, she had something amber and burning that humans call whiskey. I had a thermal beverage that probably wouldn't poison me. So, she said, how does it feel to be a hero? Deeply uncomfortable and vaguely embarrassing. How does it feel for you? About the same. She took a sip of her drink, grimaced slightly. You know what the weird part is? I don't feel like I did anything special. I just did what needed doing. That's exactly what makes it special, Captain. Anyone can be brave when it's easy. You were brave when it was nearly impossible. She looked at me, something shifting in her expression. You came in after me. Nobody asked you to do that. Someone had to save you from yourself. Thank you, Tel'raith. Really, I know I never said it properly, but thank you for risking your life for mine. I waved 2 appendages in dismissal. You're welcome. Now promise me you'll stop running into exploding bays. I promise to try. That's not reassuring, she grinned. It's the best you're going to get. And somehow that was enough. Because I'd learned something important during those terrible minutes in Bay 7. Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. It's about the moment when survival instinct and duty collide, and you choose duty even though every nerve in your body is screaming to run. Humans understood that. They'd built an entire cultural identity around it. And now, because I'd been stupid enough to follow Kara Voss into an inferno, my name was carved into their hero archives alongside hers. The galaxy, I decided, was a strange place, made stranger by the presence of humans and their contagious insanity. But maybe, just maybe, it was also made better by it. After all, someone has to run toward the flames when everyone else is running away. Someone has to drag the fallen to safety. Someone has to look at the impossible odds and decide that trying anyway is better than not trying at all. Usually that someone is human, but sometimes, if you're lucky, or unlucky enough to be near them when crisis strikes, that someone is you. And you know what? I'd do it again. Even if it was completely, absolutely, monumentally stupid, Because that's what heroes do, even reluctant ones.